Good.
All right, good afternoon. Good afternoon. Welcome. It is MyCORE webinar number 3.
I make sure we get this right.
Yeah, let's make sure that we can have the chat going. We want to be able to hear from you.
Somehow I always manage to figure it out in the moment, but then
There we go.
all right, there we go.
Excellent. Hi, Fernando. Welcome on. Right, Gary, I'm going to speed up so I can be sure to read. Good stuff. Yes, happy Easter. Excited that you're here too, Ken. Great to be here. Terrific. So glad we got that chat going, Nathan, because I know it's great for us to be here in person, but really it's not just us. We're here together with all of you that are listening in today. Here with our MyCORE webinar number 3. It's not common that I get to be here with you in person, but this is really special to be here together in downtown Jacksonville, Florida, at literally the MyCORE headquarters. And I'm here for another day with my husband, just doing some MyCORing, at least till tomorrow, we head back to Oregon. And today's topic, old habits die hard. Now I'm just thinking a lot of you are here thinking, oh, I've got some old habits. I wish I could kill off those old habits. And I think that, Nathan, oftentimes what comes to mind for people when you talk about old habits are things that are like negative. And it's interesting because I've been thinking about that in anticipation of our being together. Like, is it, what qualifies as old? Does a habit have to be old? Does a habit have to be bad? And these are some of the things we're going to unpack today in conjunction with all of you, because as we're progressing, if you hear something that triggers something for yourself, you have a question, you have a place you'd like us to go, we'd like to hear from you. We're here in the context of MyCORE with our founder and CEO, Mr. Nathan Bourne, and it's a jumping off point, frankly, for talking about the mindset, the skill set, to build world-class teams and organizations and businesses. And we believe really what's attracted you here today is to have those kinds of high-level conversations that can lead you to, frankly, being world-class and being the best that we can be. That's what attracts me to this environment, is to continue to be the best that I can be. And sometimes that is about looking at habits. I think that's really what struck us with this topic, was that it's where sometimes people get stuck. And I'd love to hear, just as a jumping off point, Nathan, because then too, I think old habits, well, gosh, Nathan's not even that old. How can you even have old habits at such a young age? But I think it's a human tendency to cultivate habits, good or bad. And it doesn't take long. In fact, I know at one point, just this past week, once we have a topic and we're moving towards another webinar, it seems like it's top of our mind for the next period of time. And I think I was promoting something in Slack for the team, and the way we had just made a decision to start doing it differently. So we made the decision, I understood the decision, but because habit would have had me do it in a different channel in Slack, even though we had just discussed it, I posted it and it was not in the right channel. And you said, old habits.
Yeah. It's good. Cool. We'll dive in.
Let's do it.
Awesome. It's good to see you in flesh.
Yeah, no kidding.
This is awesome. This is a unique opportunity. And we're here again in my office. Normally, if you've plugged in, you see me at my desk, and we're here at the couch and chair and like physically leaning in to this moment. And yeah, I've really been racking my brain, because generally if it's a given topic, I've spoken to it before, maybe presented on it
Mhm.
specifically, you know, it's kind of one of your go-tos. So when we were masterminding, just kind of brainstorming, saying like, hey, what do we want to do for the next episode? What's the topic? What's the conversation around? I didn't have this idea. It was your idea. And I think that you sort of framed it in a way that was like, okay, yeah, we could do that. So what maybe help me, I got some thoughts, you know, that I think could serve everyone today, myself included. But since you did pose the topic, and since I am technically the guest for our host, tell me why you thought of me, I guess you could say, relative
Oh,
to
sure.
those topics. Yeah.
Sure. And I think that, I mean, it doesn't have to be an age thing, obviously, and habits can be good or bad. But I think, Nathan, to many people, you've exhibited the kind of the cultivation of habits and really a discipline that has taken you from a, as you've described, challenging childhood, and that you've nevertheless extracted from that an ability to craft good habits. Like some would argue that there'd be no way that you could craft the kind of life that you have coming from where you have, but that you somehow learned how to extract the good, learned how to have disciplines that on both the personal level and the professional level, because we all know that things spill over, right, in other parts of our lives.
Okay.
And so you seem to me, and to many, I think, an outstanding, actually, example of those things. And
Thank you.
as you said, to me, it's not just about willpower.
Right. Well, let's start there then. Yeah, because well, I appreciate you kind of framing that. And I think we all have environments, right, that we come from, and you know, naturally, right, it's not a big stretch in the thinking. But I think oftentimes we end up where we are, and oftentimes it's pretty unconscious. It's this autopiloting through life. Not that you're a zombie or a mummy, but that you might just be unaware. And the challenge with becoming aware is that you can't unsee, right? You can't unhear a thing. I heard it this way once, and it's pretty profound, that your brain, your mind is like underwear. Once it expands, it can't go back. And if you've ever had an old pair of drawers, you know, you can iron them, you can throw them in the dryer, you can hang dry them. They're going quickly get back to being saggy.
And do we say that Nathan has a good sense of humor?
Inappropriate, but
at times.
right. But it's true, right? Because the mind, when it expands, it can't go back, right? It can't reform to its old way of thinking. Now, the thing is, it doesn't happen just once, right? Imagine if you bought a new pair of underwear and you put it on one time, and next time it was flopping in the wind, it wouldn't work, right? It's over time, right? It's over time that those things get broken in, like a pair of shoes, or you know, a mold that form fits to the thing that you keep over time and through spaced repetition, shaping. So in that school of thought, I think I could just maybe speak to that a little bit, because
yes,
I had to become aware first, right? There had to be something to sort of rattle my cage, to say, maybe the trajectory, maybe the default, maybe the natural next steps or decisions, or people I surround myself with, or behaviors or choices aren't the best for me and for what I want, and for where I believe I'm destined. So I just think we'd be remiss if we didn't back this all the way up. And I don't mean to always have such a universal answer, but I kind of do in a lot of ways. It has served me. And it's something that we call lead with who, right? And it's a core value of ours, and actually it's one of our 3 core values. And I won't unpack all that right now, but just sort of like speaking to it for a moment, kind of nodding to it. Because this is an ever thing, it's an evergreen thing. I think we as people have to have a dialogue with ourselves, an inner dialogue, a self-talk. We do this, right? We talk to does anyone else talk to themselves? Okay.
Yes.
Anyone do it audibly? Anyone? My grandfather used to say, it's okay if you talk to yourself. It's just not okay if you respond. So that might be where it gets a little weird, you got a split personality or something. But I think we all talk to ourselves, right? And those conversations matter. They arguably matter more than this conversation, or any conversation that you have. So I want to take a poll. You can answer in the chat. It's a pretty simple question. Does anyone here talk to themselves?
We're watching.
Maybe you're busy talking to yourself right now and you're not listening to us, right? Okay, good. So yes, you're talking to yourself.
There you go.
Okay, good. Here it is. Awesome.
Thank you.
So just want to make sure, because my question is, what does that conversation sound like? What are those dominant thoughts? And even more than the thoughts, how do you feel when you're talking to yourself? Do you encourage you, or do you discourage you? Do you build yourself up or tear yourself down? Are you speaking life, or are you speaking death? Because as a man thinketh, as a woman thinketh, as a person thinketh, you'll become. So I have thought up this person. I've imagined him. I've crafted him. I've in a sense, invented me, right? And I've talked about this recently. I know we've had some conversations, not in this setting, in our webinar series, but it's a thought. So there's a show that became popular recently, like a lot of these Netflix shows that kind of rank quickly and go to the top 10. It was called Inventing Anna. Anyone here see Inventing Anna? Super disturbing, but exciting and sensational little series on Netflix about the girl Anna that is essentially a con artist, in so many words, or at least she took things to an edge and to the brink in ways that were illegal, unethical for sure, but also illegal. But what's interesting about that story, I think, even though it didn't end too well for her, she actually accomplished the thing that she set out to accomplish. Right. She invented herself. And from prison, she paid back all of her debts from the money that she made from the Netflix story. So you're sitting there watching it, right? And you're just sort of observing this story and seeing like, man, look at this crazy person. I can't believe she did that. Or, oh my gosh, how did they not see it for what it was? How were they bamboozled? How were they tricked? What a failure. Look at her, she's locked up. I mean, arguably, she was quite successful. And maybe going to prison was somehow part of that story. Because I don't think if she didn't go to prison, the story would have been that good to put on a Netflix series, right? Right. So the point is even when it's a really bad example, right? Or it's not something that you would want to obviously live out. You can source from those bad stories or bad examples and say, okay, well, how'd she do that? And is there a way to do that for good? Is there a way to do that above the board? Is there a way to do that ethically? Is there, of course, a way to do that within the law? I don't think the mechanisms and the path and the inner dialogue is much different. So oddly enough, I could identify with the story because I know what it's like to come from a place where your trajectory is one thing and you've consciously, habitually, intentionally changed that. And although, yes, you're going to have a strong will and you're going to have a strong work ethic, but willpower won't do it. And I want to talk about what I believe will do it, but I'm going to take a pause and see if anyone is tracking so far. And if we're kind of
well, and I see some feedback actually, Nathan, both ways. Like some are saying that their internal voice is their favorite person
good
to
for
talk
you.
to, and then some that are saying it could be their own worst enemy.
Yeah.
All right. It's interesting. We got to visit, I know, just a short bit with you and your family, and I can see you doing that to some extent, even with your kids. Like it can start at a really young age. It seems to me, this idea of almost inventing yourself or planting the seeds of imagining, like the cultivation of good habits, but what could be possible. And
well, yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother thing, right? I mean, our impression on our children in those early stages are so fertile for the thoughts that can take root and grow and anchor a person. So what a responsibility we have as parents to our children. And just so you know, I have 5 children, so I'm not like the greatest parent that ever lived, but I've got some experience now. And I can see, because you got to listen, right? You might speak something into your child's life and you'll hear them later speak it back to you. Has anyone had that happen?
Oh yeah.
Right. Whoever said that sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Is it harm me, kill me? That couldn't be any more untrue. Words matter, and they particularly matter when you're forming habits. In fact, I would argue to say that they're like the most important ingredient. Words. Yeah. I mean, thought, like if it's inner dialogue, yes, but there's something powerful about speaking the thought. Many people are capable. Many people are enlightened. Many people are, on a path and on a journey, and many people have desire. It's not that people are lazy or unmotivated or stupid or idiotic or like unaware. It's that they don't speak it. And speaking it isn't just spoken word. I mean that more as an expression. People don't express it. And I think that's a deciding factor between people that are effective in their leadership, people that are effective in the art and science of people that understand how to get from where they are to where they want to be and bring people with them. I think that the habit that those people have is that they express all along the way. They don't just assume that the other party feels it or identifies with it or like is energized by it. Does that make sense? I mean, I don't mean to speak too, encrypted, but I want to get to the core of the issues, because there's all kinds of dialogue, all kinds of content out there about 21 days you can form a habit, and 75 hard, and P90X, and there's all these programs all the time that come out, and they catch wind and they catch fire, and they're awesome. By all means, go, work out for 75 straight days, don't eat something that you're not supposed to eat for 30 days. That's all well and good. But the real question is, who are you? Because if you're a healthy person, you're going to do what healthy people do all the time. If you're a successful person, you're going to do successful things all the time. You're not going to do it just as part of a program. You're going to do it in the narrative of your whole life. And I've seen people get on kicks. I've seen people try fads. I've seen people try everything under the sun. And it has an effect. It often has that kind of beginner's luck where you get something, you drop 10 pounds, you make $1,000, you bring on a client, you find yourself a girlfriend, boyfriend, but like, I want to know the long-lasting, slow-release, habitual, hardwired way to living a fulfilled life. And that's what I'm obsessed with. So I'm not entirely qualified to speak, but I've got a little bit of fruit in my life that would say, okay, I see those berries and strawberries and little fruit salad that you have from the tree that you've built, that you've rooted into your thinking. So that's what I really want to get to. And I know we've got a little time to do that.
Well, it's almost like
yeah,
you're
tell me
saying.
if that makes sense to you. And of course, it must.
Yeah, we want to hear from you all because I'm hearing Nathan talk about the habit that he's cultivated is almost like this idea of being in touch with who he is. This idea of leading with who, like that in and of itself.
Right, that is the habit.
It's
the dominant thought process.
And I don't know which came first, the speaking or the doing, because it's almost like I hear lead from who coming from you as a guiding philosophy that you were living by, and in a way, like passing that on to all of us. So, is it easier to just figure out who we are and let that be the thing instead of trying to have this willpower of whatever that would look like?
Yeah, let's talk about it, because we have the habit, right, to just sort of stay on brand with the topic of this webinar. We have the habit of being ourselves. And you know what a great way to find out about who you are? Drink a bunch of alcohol. Just drink a bunch of alcohol. If you're wondering, like, who am I? Go drink some alcohol.
And see who you become.
And just see who you become. Go make a bunch of money. Go get a bunch of money. Go win the lottery. Go take on $1 million. Because generally those stimulants, again, I'm not qualified to speak to alcoholism. Don't quote me on these things. This is philosophy, right? This is just world according to Nathan and Susan, right? But generally people will be more of who they are. So that's a good way to speed up the process and get aware, right? Is to form an addiction. So habits and addictions aren't that unlike. How do you say it? Like that you said, they're not unlike each other. I have an addiction, 100%. I work nonstop. I think nonstop. I feel nonstop. And it takes a pretty compelling person to get me to not do those things. In fact, I've really only found one person that can make me do that. And I married her and had a bunch of children. So,
as it should be.
Right. She has a way of getting me to stop thinking about work. Not like generally, but like when I'm with her, when we're together,
Right.
In that moment, I find myself not thinking about work. And I'm damn, like, I better get back to it. Right? Or if we go away, I can unplug. So I don't mean to digress there. I'm just saying that if we're going to talk about changing these habits and forming these habits and them having an effect, we can't even get to that if we're not first talking about what's up right now. How's it going for you now? I've got something I want to share that is just kind of funny, but I think it might resonate, but I just want to take a pause for a second and see if people are tracking with us so far, and if any of that is triggering some thought, and you're so good at moderating, so anything that you want to share as well.
Yeah, this whole idea of self-awareness can still seeing here in the chat, and thank you guys for jumping in and being a part of the conversation. I think we want to address this because we believe that a lot of you who are tuning in are wanting to feel better outcomes in your life. And we see that is like this, right? It dovetails between personal and professional, but it's all got to have that level of the authenticity. It's all got to have that level of the who-ness, really, that Nathan seems to have like mastered really at a relatively young age. And we always want to hear the fun things that you're bringing into the topic, because it's
well, I'll just tell you a quick story. So some of you know my personal story, but I'm from a big family. I'm the fourth of 9 children, and we grew up in a unique way, and didn't have a lot of resources, but leaned on each other a lot, and just kind of made it work. And I have a brother. He's the next one in the order. He's the 5th. Many of you met Noah. He's the man. He's the best. Noah's the best. He's always my little brother. He's about 3 years younger than me. Well, he's battled with addiction for, probably half his life. Since being a teenager, a young teenager, until now, 31. And he's got a heart of gold. If you've ever met Noah, it's just the best, right? And it's been so hard for me as his brother and older brother to watch him struggle with that, because that wasn't my battle. That I have my own stuff. I got my stuff, but I didn't have an addiction to pills or alcohol or drugs. I had no taste for that. No, just didn't even really want to dabble. If anything, I probably was afraid that I'd be addicted. That I would follow that path. So he had a big episode about a year ago where he was missing for some time, and it was because of essentially a withdrawal, which created psychedelic psychiatric episode, right? And there were some what they call it, delusions. So he was delusional in that state, and we were very worried. We got the police involved. We put out things on social media, and it was a tough moment. So I saw him months later, and he's been clean now for it's probably 9 months, coming up on a year. And we were talking about it, but if you had any trauma in your life, you probably know humor is a good way to get through it. Generally, people that aren't funny aren't that haven't been traumatized, vice versa. So I said, we were sitting at Outback with him and a couple of my other family members. I said, Noah, your biggest problem is that you keep quitting. And he said, kind of looked at me like, I was like, yeah, you're kind of bad at being a drug addict. And he's just cocks his head huh? That's the whole thing about it. You only have problems when you stop doing the drugs. And he was like, oh my God, you're right. I was like, yeah, you gotta stop quitting, man. You say make a decision. Like which one is it? You need to make a lifelong commitment to drugs. If you could get real serious about that and stop being such a punk and quitting every few years, this could be a lot easier for everyone involved. We could build a plan, how much money do you need? Who are the drug suppliers? Let's just get a good solid plan in place for you to do drugs for the rest of your life. Now, you might shorten it significantly, but you wouldn't have that many problems. The problem is when you stop doing the drugs, you try to stop the habit. You try to change the picture, change the trajectory, change the game. That's when shit goes crazy. I said, it's when you went sober that problems arise. And he was like, oh my God, you're right. And I said, so you need to make a decision now, which one it is. And if it's drugs, I support you. I will do my best to get you the best drugs at the best price and make sure that they're on tap. And we laughed, but he kept thinking about it. And was like, you're totally right. The problems came when I decide to be sober, not when I'm doing drugs. When I'm doing drugs, life is pretty good.
So that he could distinguish that the discomfort was not like the bad thing. So I think that's what happens. Then we get uncomfortable. But that's not the stuff bad.
Right. Because here's back what we were saying earlier. There's a person that Noah is and still believes he is, that is not a drug addict. Right? That's the problem. The problem is that he still believes that that person exists. If he saw himself as a complete junkie, living under a bridge, doing whatever he had to do to get drugs, and that was the dominant who thought in his mind, there would be no problems. He would just walk that out. He could succeed at that. It would be awful, but stop thinking good, bad, right, wrong, dark, light. I'm talking about is. If a good person jumps off this building or a bad person jumps off this building, they're going to hit the floor because of gravity, not because they're good or bad or right or wrong, but because of the law of gravity. And I think lead with who is a law. And that's why I'm so passionate about sharing this law, right? I'm sure when they came up with E equals MC squared, I was like, yo, we gotta be telling people about this.
All right.
Right? It's, you know what the law of relativity? Yeah, it's crazy, right? Like these are laws. So all silliness aside, you could apply that into a prettier world, right? I want to go from 100 grand to 200 grand. I want to go from being this weight to that weight. The problem is you keep imagining a person that isn't you. So it causes anxiety. It causes stress. It causes imposter syndrome. It causes haters. It causes people to say, you keep acting like you're this person, but you're not this person. So you better get real comfortable with that feeling, because there's going to be a season, like a long one, like a dark one, like a tough one, where you are uprooting things that have been poured into your life that are not of your making. And you better believe it's in your DNA too. It's not just in your nurture, it's in your nature. So that's my story for now, and I'm sticking to it. I'd love to hear if that isn't completely outlandish and people can kind of read between the lines on that.
And thank you guys for your feedback. I remember that time with Noah. That was a tough time.
Yeah.
And yet I respect how you use humor to shed light on things, and that idea that there's like developmental tension. Like in order to develop, you need some tension. You need something to rub up against, which is why I think a lot of people tune in here actually to these webinars. You could still be just going about your day, but there's something that drew you to this topic, to us, to being here together.
Yeah, because he already had the habits formed. He had it set up. He built the infrastructure for it. Like he knew where it needed to go, he knew how much money, he knew how to hide it. Like he knew the deal. And those habits were in place. And they were going just fine. Nobody came and busted it up but him. Right? It's not like, an addict isn't going to be like, yeah, and then I got arrested and they really messed me up. Or, oh yeah, I was, they couldn't find anywhere to get alcohol. It's like, no, you made a decision that this is not who you are. And now we all have to deal with this. Do you see the parallels, right? I'm not qualified to talk about drugs and alcohol, so I'm going to go off on that. What I'm going to talk about is that if you are making this much money or leading this many people or doing this career, this is a little more my forte, right?
And all of a sudden you go, oh, I'm going to build a new brand. I'm going to build a new income. I'm going to make a bigger impact. I'm going to go into nonprofit. I'm going to change the world. I'm going to change my community. I'm going to change my identity. I'm going to change my style. You just set an alarm that everybody around you goes, hold the phone. That's not who you are. And you go, the hell it's not. That's the rub. That's the sticking point. If you can make it through that moment, and I'm sorry, it's not 21 days. It's not 75 hard days. It's not P90X. It's forever. Because the inner dialogue, even after the new people in your life, because you'll get new people in your life, because you'll be in new communities, new networks, new zip codes, new clubs, new socioeconomics, new status, new. They'll go. You might even be leading a webinar series. But in here, you'll constantly be going, this isn't me. And you have to say, the hell it isn't. Just saying. I gotta get some water. You keep talking. I'm getting all caught now.
Right, and how do we not have that be just about willpower, right? Or what does it take to have the fortitude to ongoingly, as we're hearing Nathan talk about, right, working on that inner voice and our strength. And I know this morning we were, well, because a lot of what MyCORE does is working with business owners, we were talking about the kinds of habits that business owners tend to have, that just because they're old, I don't mean old in age, I mean because it's the ways in which we've done business. And actually a lot of what I think MyCORE tends to are unexamined parts of business, if I may take it there to some extent, because
it's a good segue.
It might almost seem so mundane. Like there are parts of our lives that can be left unexamined, our business lives or our personal lives, until you realize there could be a better way. It's just you, it's like you said, when you're have that awareness, then all of a sudden everything's different. And
well, you can't unsee it. Right. And the challenge is that those grooves, those patterns, those pathways, which are really neuro pathways, right? Like example, you guys had your rental car here yesterday, right? And I had forgotten that we had to go get my car at the airport. And I walked over to the kitchen and I just had a quick interaction, and I literally started walking completely on autopilot with my keys in hand. I put them in my hand to go to the airport, out the back door, where I have done that now for over a year in this building, to go get my car in the parking lot. And I got to the door, I opened the door. It was like, and came to. I was like, how'd I get here? You know, because I wasn't thinking about the car, right? I wasn't thinking about the parking lot. I wasn't thinking about the airport. I wasn't thinking about you guys being here. I was thinking about something that my body and my mind had done many times over and over again. So watch this. I was unconsciously competent to getting from this building to my car, from point A to point B, from where I was to where I wanted to be. I was unconsciously competent to it. I didn't know that I knew it. That's the highest form of habit forming. So let's unpack that to where you might be, which is unconsciously incompetent, where you don't know what you don't know. What a dangerous, vast space, and really an infinite amount of that. Right?
it's opportunity too.
It's opportunity, which is, this is where you engage awareness. This is where you engage presence. This is where you engage inquisitiveness, however you'd say that, right? This is where you engage wonder. Like, what's that cute little saying? Not all that wonder are lost, right? I know it's a different kind of wonder, but right, well, not all that wander are lost. Well, not all that wander, WONDER, are lost.
Play on words.
Right, it's fun.
Yeah.
Words matter, right? They matter.
So
So I think we can talk about that. I think we can shake that up a little bit, and we can put a business lens on it. We can speak from where MyCORE exists, right? Let's do that. By the way, you might be listening and saying, Nathan, I don't even know what MyCORE is. I just saw this thing and you're talking about habits and I'm on. Cool. I'll tell you real quick. MyCORE serves local businesses. We're made for Main Street. Our mission is to be the world's most people-centric company. What this means is that everything we do at MyCORE, we do through a lens of humanity. We do it through a lens of being a person. Some companies build tech and they try to support it by people. We build people and then we support it with tech. So we're cloud-based, we're in all 50 states, we're fully remote, and we have a full stack of solutions that we provide, from accounting to bookkeeping, to payroll, to benefits, to HR, and everything in between. So we're all in one, but we're not all or nothing, which is great because you can find your gateway drug to MyCORE. Okay, it's a bad
So to speak.
But that said, as an advisory firm, we fancy ourselves, or a people advisory firm, to be even more specific. We bring to life in our clients' lives these very important, or might I say, core functions of a business. We also play really well with others. So if they say, hey, Nathan, I love my bookkeeper. We saw that yesterday in that meeting,
Sure
right?
did.
Got a great bookkeeper, solid, really like the flow we have, but I am looking for an accountant. Awesome. And we already knew that they were getting started with payroll. Great. So we were anchoring the payroll solution and experience, recognizing that we'd be working and interfacing with their bookkeeper, and then bringing in the accounting solution and probably benefits and eventually HR as they keep growing. I'm only fleshing that out so that hopefully you become a client. But in all seriousness,
Or not.
is because there's
Or not.
a bigger narrative there, which is that, get this, we chose solutions and verticals and spaces that have been around for a while. It's nothing new. They've been counting beans for a while, right? Old, right? And these habits, these technologies, these solutions, these processes, this sort of way that people approach these things. Some are tried and true, obviously. Some have withheld the test of time. Others, in a new world of work, in a new business environment, have to change. Or just die on the vine. I don't know, waste away. Here lies the company that never innovated, and isn't it great? But for those that want to be aware and that want to change, well, they're going to have to know that there are things that they are unaware of, that they are unconsciously incompetent to, that they don't know. Part of the way we build at MyCORE is to equip a sales team, to equip a team to go out in the market, to simply move people from that space to one step up, which is when they do know what they don't know. So that they can become humble enough to say, I don't really know that well. Or we have something in place, but I don't know that it's like the best it could be. Well, we have payroll, but we're not putting it in the palm of our employees' hands for them to access their pay stubs and to be able to look at tax documents and clock in and clock out and understand the breakdown of their paycheck. But yeah, like they get their paycheck and we pay the government. Awesome. That is so sexy. Can't wait to work at your company. Right? So what we're doing as businesses, and by the way, hopefully, no matter what your business is, no matter what your forte is, no matter what your jam is, your product, your service, your good, you're starting to think, okay, I'm not competing against anything but old habits. Who do you compete with, Nathan? Old habits. Complacency. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I think I checked that box, crossed that T, dotted that I. And in a developed world where people already have the thing that you're providing, I promise you, they already have the thing that you're providing. It's not unique, it's not different, but you are unique and you are different. And if you get really good at expressing yourself and finding other people to also express themselves alongside of you, now you have energy. Now you have wind at your back and at your sail. Now you're moving, now you're shaking.
And people will trust that, I think, Nathan. I was also struck, we met with the gentleman, remember yesterday, who had been in the insurance industry for 40 some years. And really, he's killing it. He's doing fine.
Great.
But he had a level of recognition around needing to modernize, needing to do something more innovative, even though he was almost like, it was uncomfortable to even like hear about it, even though that level of recognition, because there's still that discomfort, just like we were talking about before, but the trust was built.
Right. He was starting to recognize that maybe there's some things that he doesn't know. Maybe it's not as modern, maybe it's not as integrated, maybe it's not as connected, maybe it's not as alive as it could be. And in any interaction, when you want to influence and you want to create, a connection, it could be because you're looking to hire somebody that's really talented, it could be because you're looking for an inroad into a partnership, could be because you want to sell your product, or whatever your jam is, whatever your focus is in that moment. It can be very helpful, I've found, to assess the other party's habits and then go, how do I get in the flow with a neural pathway that is already in place, and then incrementally through spaced repetition influence it, bolster it, improve it, enhance it. You cannot come guns blazing. You cannot come out of left field. If you can, you're in the most transactional business, and good on you. But if you're in a business like we are, which is a relationship business, and it only is formed through trust and through bonds of trust, then listen up, because this is really, really, really important. I am finding. So now what we're assessing is, does that person see that maybe there's room for improvement? Maybe there's room for enhancement. Well, we should probably space this out, right? So for example, in that particular meeting, because I was part of it, we didn't get into the what's and how's.
Right.
And everyone wants to jump right to the what's and how's. Nathan, what I told you earlier what we do. Look us up, go to our website. Come on, you can figure it out. You're a big boy, you're a big girl. The real question that people are asking themselves is, how does this person make me feel? And it should be a little bit comfortable and a little bit uncomfortable, and a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit comfortable. Because if you're not making people feel uncomfortable a little bit, I have a tendency to make people feel a lot of it uncomfortable, so I'm working on it. Then they're not, I've got great people like you, but then they're not growing. And if you're not ripening, you're rotting. If you're not growing, you're dying. No such thing as stagnant. You're doing one of those two things. So this just puts a lens on things a little differently, right? And now you can assess differently and assess yourself differently. Most importantly, right? You got to look at yourself and say, well, what kind of habits do I have? And are they serving me? And are they serving others? That was actually the little post on social media. It said, are your habits serving you? Are they serving others? If not, that's talk. If so, that's talk. Mm-hmm. Because here's the thing, you might have some good habits. And we want to talk about that too, right?
All right.
We want to talk about how there's some things working for you, and you might want to punch that up a bit. So we assess that even on a very practical level, we might know, oh, you've got a good bookkeeper. We genuinely know how valuable that is. And because we're holistic in our approach, it doesn't have to be our person. Right? It doesn't have to be the MyCORE bookkeeper. That's fine, because we're looking at the full picture of their business, their mission, their identity, their core values, their why, all the things, because if we can come at it that way, we can help people move from not knowing what they don't know to knowing what they don't know. And then we'll educate them so that they are consciously competent, which means they now know that they know it. And every meeting I go into, I know if the person's consciously competent if they know what they know, because they've been in it for a while. Maybe they're an HR director, maybe they're a seasoned CEO, maybe they're a seasoned CFO, and I go, wow, this person knows what they're talking about, and they know that they know it. And you would think that's a great place to stop. The challenge with that is that you're probably going to be arrogant if you know what you know. The coolest people are so damn good that they forgot how well they know it. They like forgot how good they were.
And still somehow recognize that they're forever developing and
Learning,
being
growing,
poured into.
and battling those thoughts that they don't belong there, that they don't deserve a seat at that table, that they're not qualified. And that is a lie from the pit of hell. It is all designed to deteriorate your power. No. That's what I'm thinking today.
And we're back to that internal dialogue that we kicked off with. And that the habits can be good habits too. I love what Laura said here about complacency is a decision and can be an extremely harmful decision.
Mhm.
Or the decision to not be complacent.
Who said this?
Laura,
I love that. Our Laura,
Yeah.
can't
Yeah.
see them blind.
I have to lean forward.
Right. I love that. I heard this some time ago, that inaction is action,
Sure,
right? If
Sure.
you're being indecisive, you're making a decision. It's to do a whole lot of nothing. Right.
it is.
And we don't have time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. I heard it this way: love them from a distance. If you get into an appointment, you get into a meeting, you get into a conversation, interaction, that person has no room. They're ironclad, they're locked in, they're not changing a bit. Back up and love them anyway, but from a distance. And that's often your family, right? That's your in-laws, that's your cousins, that's your extended family, that's friends from back in the day. Because when you decide to change, to grow, to expand, to build, to reinvent yourself, or maybe invent yourself really for the first time, because you've been so wishy-washy and so undecided that I don't even know where you are. You're just blending in so much. You're like camouflage. Nathan, you say some bold things. Wow, you're pretty polarized. You really stick out. How do you think I got here, bro? Blending in.
And I think more people see that in you and want to align, to bring out their own best selves, to bring out what's uniquely you, that bold, and to give voice to it. You were talking earlier about it starts with words. It starts with putting it out there and getting it out of our heads. And it can be a bold thing to do. And sometimes that's the place to start.
And
Right,
also
that
I think,
articulation.
yeah, and recognizing if that really is you. Right, because it's gonna need to be about half and half. Like, it's gonna need to be about half of this person you invented and half of really who you are. Right, and this is like it's really important asterisk, really important disclaimer, because if you're too caught up in this like self-made, self-invented, like I have the power dialogue or doctrine, which you do need, I believe you simultaneously need, right in conjunction with it, right in lockstep with it, this understanding that you did not make you. You know, as a Christian, that's a real clear thing in my mind. You know, I believe that I have a creator that created me with an identity that is uniquely me, with a purpose that is uniquely for me. And I believe that to be true in everyone else too. Right, so it's not about superiority or uniqueness or so different or polarizing, but it's really about, wow. And here's the thing, regardless of whether you believe it at the level that I shared, your parents made you, you didn't make you, you didn't concoct yourself, you didn't DIY yourself. Biology made you. So at least be humble to biology, damn. You know, like, whoa, all right, we can talk about the other stuff right now, but like, come on. You got here one way and one way only, and it didn't take that long. I know it's only a few minutes. So So the point there is that if you're too leaned into I'm creating myself, then you may be caught up in a certain personality type or a person like myself, because a lot of times what will happen is I might inspire in somebody that they want to be like me. I'm like, no, do not do that. Trust me, you do not want to be me. Be you. And you might be meek. But the good news is the meek inherit the earth. Yours might be quiet. Yours might be an internal problem. There's a makeup that is uniquely you. So the real question is, are you finding a void in the market for you? Find the team you need to fill the void on. Find the leader that you need to support. Find the product, service, good, industry, ministry, you name it, that is missing you.
And that will create the habit that you want to have. That's the flip side of the death that we're talking about with old habits dying hard. So we don't want them all to die. So,
Because to put a cherry on top, and I said it kind of in promoting this little conversation, the good things about you, the good things about me, the good things about Susan, the good things about us, they're habitual now too, right? Kindness might be a habit of yours. I get real aware of that. Empathy, generosity, grace, right? Patience, these things that are true virtues, not just virtue signaling, right? But that are really like sustainable in you. Assess them, be aware of them. And then so good at them that you kind of aren't aware, because you're consciously, or excuse me, unconsciously competent.
that's a great note to wrap on actually today, Nathan, I think, and to maybe speak for a quick minute about where we go from here. Because we've really enjoyed having you on the webinars for the past 3 episodes, and not to say he won't be back, but we're gonna have a different guest on our next webinar here in
A couple weeks.
2 weeks, yeah.
I appreciate that. It's funny because a few moments ago you said it, you know, and in that you and many others at MyCORE, bless y'all hearts, you've found a place at MyCORE to fill a void. And mainly that void is in my abilities, right? Because there's lots of holes, lots of flaws, lots of issues. And I think what leaders do, especially strong leaders, they don't reveal all those holes. They're not willing to fumble through it. And then they wonder why they can't lead leaders and they can only lead followers, because leaders will not stay somewhere unless there's a true, real need for them. And a need that we had and will always have is a leader like Laura. Laura, who is on this meeting chiming in. Laura Selkin is our Chief Experience Officer, and she brings so much to the team, so much to the executive team, so much to the MyCORE experience. Her and her team are day in and day out working incredibly hard for our clients when it comes to those things we mentioned, accounting and bookkeeping and payroll and benefits and HR. And I know that we're going to talk, when I say we, I'm not talking on behalf of MyCORE, I will not be there. I will be listening and chiming in, that you will be hosting our next webinar with Laura Selkin and talking with a really cool, our Chief Relationship Officer, love that title, came up with this topic, and it is mind your own business.
Oh, that says so much right there, doesn't it?
I love that.
I get you thinking.
Steward your own business, right? Be mindful of your own business.
Yes.
And maybe don't be unconsciously incompetent about your business. So I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, I really am.
And thank you for having us on 3 times in a row.
It's been so much fun. Thank
Maybe
you.
episode 72, I'll be back.
Or a bit sooner.
I hope.
We thank you all for being here and participating and being part of the conversation. Look forward to welcoming you back. Actually, the registration link is live, mycore.io/webinars for the next segment, which will take place on April 7th. Let's see.
19th, right? 2 weeks from today, one
There you go.
PM Eastern Standard Time. So
Thank you.
exactly 2 weeks, well, in one less hour from now.
Thank you.
Yeah, and yeah, you go right to the website. If you find yourself on mycore.io, go down to the footer, you'll see webinars, click on it, then hit register now. And look, put it on your calendar, right? That's a good habit, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, there you go. I so look forward to hosting Laura. You're such a pro. Thanks for being here today. Bye, guys. See you then.